What if I told you that the very thing that made you feel like you were too much was actually your deepest power? What if being soft in a world that doesn't reward softness wasn't a weakness, but a calling? What if being the kind of woman every man wants to marry and protect wasn't about perfection, appearance, or pretending, but instead was about coming home to yourself in a way that no one ever taught you, because maybe they didn't know how. And now you're here, quietly wondering, why do they always choose someone else? Why do they chase you at first, but vanish when you finally open your heart? Why do you keep giving more and receiving less? You're not wrong for wanting a love that feels safe, deep, protective, and steady. And you're not wrong for feeling exhausted by a world that praises the woman who performs, but forgets the woman who feels. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about remembering the parts of you that got buried beneath survival. The girl who knew how to open. The woman who longed to be chosen, not for her usefulness, not for her beauty, not for her silence, but for her soul. This is for her. This is for you. Because once you understand how men actually fall in love, protect, and commit, once you see the parts of you that quietly repel what you're longing for and the parts of you that magnetize it, you'll stop running in circles, you'll stop confusing attention with devotion, and you'll become the kind of woman that no man wants to lose. Not because you're playing a role, but because you finally stopped abandoning the real you. If you've ever felt like you were too sensitive, too emocional, too soft for this world, you are exactly where you need to be. Because sensitivity, when healed, becomes emotional power, and softness, when protected, becomes the deepest strength a woman can carry. You don't need to chase love anymore. You need to remember who you were before you thought you had to. If you feel that in your chest, if a part of you is whispering, "This is for me," then stay. This video will hold something sacred for you. It might stir something. It might soften something. It might crack something open. And if it does, I invite you to gently support this space. Like the video if it touches you. Subscribe so you don't lose this feeling when the world gets loud again. And leave a comment if you feel seen. Let this be your reminder. You are not too much. You were just never met with enough. Let's begin. There's a moment, quiet, almost forgettable, when a woman realizes that love has always felt like a transaction. Not loud, not cruel, just conditional. If you're good, you're loved. If you're useful, you're needed. If you're calm, you're safe. And so you adapt. You silence the ache. You smile when it hurts. You try harder when you're already breaking. And somewhere in between, all the pleasing, all the proving, you forget who you are. But not completely. There's still a part of you, a quiet, unbroken part that remembers. That part gets louder when you're alone. Like when you're lying in bed after another situationship has faded into silence. Like when the man who said you were everything he wanted suddenly pulls away and you're left trying to solve a puzzle that wasn't yours to begin with. Like when you wonder why you can give so much and still feel so unseen. This is the beginning of your awakening. Not the glossy, Instagram version, but the real, messy one. The kind that breaks your heart in the most honest way. Because you start to see that the love you've been chasing is the love you never received. You see that being low maintenance wasn't empowerment, it was a survival skill. You weren't being easygoing. You were abandoning your needs. You weren't being chill. You were trying to be chosen. And here's the truth no one told you. The woman who bends too much gets overlooked. The woman who gives too much gets taken for granted. The woman who chases gets tired. And the woman who waits in silence gets forgotten. But the woman who remembers herself, who rises not with anger, but with clarity becomes unforgettable. Not because she's loud, not because she's hard, but because she is rooted. There's something magnetic about a woman who no longer needs to perform, who doesn't apologize for her heart, who doesn't hide her standards beneath politeness. Because when a man meets a woman like that, he feels something different. He doesn't just feel attraction, he feels responsibility. Not obligation, not pressure, but a deep, primal desire to protect what is rare, to stay close to what is real, to cherish what feels like truth in a world of performances. But here's the paradox. A man can't protect what you don't protect first. If you constantly abandon yourself, your needs, your desires, your emotions just to keep the connection, you teach him that you don't need protecting. You teach him that you'll stay, even when it hurts. And that's not love. That's emotional starvation. That's spiritual shrinkage. That's a little girl still believing she has to earn what should have always been given freely. But not anymore. Because now, you are remembering. And every time you choose silence over chasing, stillness over scrambling, standards over settling, you become the woman he doesn't just want to sleep with, he wants to build with. You become the woman whose heart he respects, not because you told him to, but because you showed him how. You see, the woman every man wants to marry and protect is not the one who makes no demands. She is the one who makes space. Space for truth. Space for depth. Space for him to feel like a man, not because she shrinks, but because she rises. There's a quiet power in a woman who knows her worth, not from reading books or quoting self-love affirmations, but because she's been through the fire and still chose softness. A woman who says, I won't beg you to stay, but I'll never betray myself again just to keep someone. That's not pride. That's healing. And it's rare. So rare that when a man meets her, he feels it in his gut before his mind can catch up. Because for the first time, he doesn't feel like he has to perform either. He can relax into truth. He can feel his own heart beat again. But let's be honest, it's terrifying at first for him and for you. Because what we've been told about love was shaped in houses of control, in cultures of survival, in moments of neglect. We learned that love meant sacrificing. That love meant tolerating. That love meant dimming. So when you finally stand in your light, not everyone will clap. Some will say, you've changed. Some will pull away. Some will try to provoke the old version of you, the one who would shrink, silence herself, second-guess everything. Let them, because you're not here to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding themselves. You're here to be seen by someone who can hold your bigness without trying to cage it. You're here to love in a way that doesn't abandon your inner child. You're here to create safety not just in a man, but in your own nervous system. You're here to receive, not just attention, not just promises, but presence. That kind of love, the one that sees you, the one that hears you, the one that stays without needing to be chased, only comes when you stop hiding your truth. When you stop calling chaos passion, when you stop mistaking distance for mystery, when you stop believing that a love that hurts more than it heals is somehow noble. You are not here to heal men. You are not here to babysit their potential. You are here to walk beside someone who chooses growth just like you do, who chooses peace not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. The woman every man wants to marry and protect is not perfect. She is powerful because she's honest, because she's no longer afraid of being alone, not because she wants to be, but because she refuses to lose herself again. So she waits, not forever, but long enough to remember her name, long enough to walk herself home, long enough to let the wrong ones pass without turning it into a story of unworthiness. She waits until her soul feels safe, until her body feels rested, until her softness feels protected by herself first. Then love becomes a mirror. Then a man becomes an amplifier, not a savior. And she becomes the kind of woman no man wants to lose, because she's the kind of woman who would never lose herself again. There is something sacred about a woman who no longer negotiates with her own soul just to be loved, who no longer tries to be everything just to keep someone who gives her only pieces. It's in the way she speaks slowly, from the chest, like every word carries weight. It's in the way she pauses before responding, not out of hesitation, but out of self-respect. It's in the way she walks away, not out of punishment, but out of peace. Men feel it, and not just the good ones, even the unavailable ones, even the ones who once got away with breadcrumbs. Suddenly, their tricks don't work. Their silence doesn't shake her. Their charm doesn't confuse her, because she's not addicted to being chosen anymore. She's addicted to being free. You see, this kind of woman, she breaks cycles without making noise. She doesn't need to post about her glow-up. She doesn't need to prove she's moved on. She just moves forward, inward, deeper. And something in that movement awakens something in a man, the kind of man who's ready, not ready for your body, your energy, your beauty, but ready for your truth. He doesn't see your emotions as too much, he sees them as a map. He doesn't run from your silence. He leans into it. He doesn't make you question your worth. He mirrors it back to you. And when a man like that meets a woman like you, a woman who has done the hard work of coming back to herself, he doesn't play games. He doesn't keep you guessing. He doesn't confuse consistency with boredom, because he knows a woman like you doesn't come around twice. You're not the loudest in the room, but your presence shifts everything. You don't chase, but you magnetize. You don't beg, but you receive. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you've finally healed the wound that told you love had to be earned. You are the calm in the storm, the warmth in the cold, the clarity in the noise. And the man who is meant for you will feel safe in your presence, not because you make things easy, but because you make things real. Realness is rare, but it's not for everyone. That's why the road to becoming this woman can feel lonely. You will outgrow people. You will disappoint those who only liked the unhealed you. You will find yourself sitting with grief, not just of relationships lost, but of parts of yourself you had to leave behind. But let me tell you something. On the other side of that grief is gold. The kind of love that doesn't ask you to shrink. The kind of life that doesn't punish you for being too alive. The kind of man who doesn't confuse your softness with weakness, but sees it as the sacred force it is. That's what's waiting for you. Not through chasing, not through fixing others, but through returning to you. There will come a day quiet, unremarkable, when you're standing in your kitchen, or walking home alone, or just breathing, and you'll realize, I don't ache anymore. Not in that desperate way, not in that hungry way, not in that way that made you twist yourself into shapes just to be loved a little longer. Because the woman you've become, she doesn't starve for affection. She doesn't bleed for validation. She doesn't confuse attention with intimacy. She waits for truth, not passively, not with crossed arms and wounded pride, but with quiet knowing, the kind of knowing that comes from having walked through your own darkness and come out whole. This is what makes her rare. This is what makes her unforgettable. She's no longer addicted to fantasy, she wants reality. A reality where her voice matters, where her tears are not an inconvenience but an invitation, where her laughter doesn't scare someone into disappearing but draws them closer. This woman doesn't just want romance. She wants respect. She wants emotional integrity. She wants depth, not chaos disguised as chemistry. And yes, that means she'll be alone for a while. But she's not waiting. She's building. She's nourishing. She's filling her life with things that make her feel alive. Books that stir her. Music that holds her. Friendships that feel like home. And when a man enters her world, he'll feel it instantly. This is not a woman who needs saving. She's already saved herself. She doesn't demand he be her world. She invites him to join hers. That's the difference. And that difference changes everything. Because a woman who has found peace within herself becomes a sanctuary. Not the kind of fire that burns everything down, but the kind that warms a man's soul when the world has gone cold. He doesn't want to lose her, not because he's afraid of being alone, but because he's finally felt what it means to be seen by someone who doesn't lose herself in the process. That kind of woman, she inspires commitment, not through pressure, not through persuasion, but through presence, through boundaries spoken calmly, through emotions expressed clearly, through a heart that is open but not unguarded. She doesn't test him. She doesn't chase him. She simply lives so honestly, so richly, so deeply rooted in her own truth that anything less than devotion cannot survive in her presence. She doesn't play games. She plays real. And that's what makes her unforgettable. Not to everyone, but to the one who's ready to meet her there. There's a silence that comes after heartbreak, not the loud kind, not the crying on the bathroom floor kind, but the still, haunting kind. The one where you start to question if you were ever truly seen, if all the soft parts of you were wasted on someone who only knew how to take. You scroll past couples in love and feel a subtle sting, not envy, not bitterness, just a quiet ache, like something beautiful is possible, but somehow always out of reach for you. You wonder if it's because you're too deep, too expressive, too intense. But love was never supposed to be small. You were never meant to dim. That's what you're starting to remember now, not with your head, but with your body. You feel it when you say no without guilt. You feel it when you let someone walk away without chasing. You feel it when you sit with your loneliness without filling it with distractions. That's the rewiring. That's the sacred rebuild. It doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like tears no one sees. Sometimes it looks like deleting a number before you text it. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace over proving your point. But it's in those moments that your nervous system starts to learn. Love doesn't have to mean pain. Presence doesn't have to be earned. Connection doesn't have to come from sacrifice. You begin to feel safe inside yourself. And that changes everything. Because a woman who is safe inside her own body is magnetic, not in a performative way, but in an unshakable way. Men feel it. The right one won't feel intimidated. He'll feel invited into something real. Because you've done the work to meet yourself. You've cleared space for someone to meet you there, not above you, not below you, but beside you. This isn't the fairy tale you were sold. It's better. It's honest. It's soft and strong at the same time. It's two people who've stopped performing and started feeling. Two people who understand that intimacy isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the quiet moments. In the way you hold eye contact and don't flinch. In the way your no is firm but kind. In the way your yes isn't given from fear, but from fullness. You're not becoming the woman every man wants to marry and protect by accident. You're becoming her every time you choose alignment over attachment, every time you choose peace over patterns, every time you choose your soul over the stories you were told. This is your becoming, not a reinvention, a return to what you were always meant to be. There's something hauntingly beautiful about a woman who has finally stopped waiting to be chosen, not in bitterness, not in pride, but in peace. She no longer enters a room scanning for validation. She no longer shapes her voice to sound more digestible. She no longer fears being misunderstood because she finally understands herself. That is the woman a man remembers, not because she played hard to get, but because she was already gotten by her own heart, by her own healing, by her own hands. There's a depth in her now that can't be faked, a tenderness that's been sharpened, not lost. She'll hold a man's gaze a little longer, not to seduce, but to study. She doesn't just want chemistry, she wants capacity. Can you hold space for what's real? Can you stay when it's quiet, when it's raw, when it's inconvenient? She's not impressed by performative love anymore. She listens less to words, more to energy, more to the pauses between promises, more to the way a man looks at her when she's not smiling. Because she knows now love isn't proven in the peak moments. It's revealed in the subtle ones. The silence after an argument, the tone used when things don't go her way, the response when she speaks, her fear instead of burying it. That's where real intimacy lives, and that's what she's ready for now. Not the illusion of closeness, not the rush of dopamine, but the honor of being known fully and staying anyway. She has stopped measuring her worth by how quickly someone falls for her. Now, she watches how someone holds her, not just her hand, but her anger, her sadness, her truth, and she doesn't panic if someone walks away anymore, because losing someone never hurt as much as losing herself did. That was the real heartbreak. Abandoning her own voice to keep peace, shrinking her needs to avoid seeming needy, giving again and again, hoping they'd finally give back. That chapter is over. She doesn't seek revenge. She seeks restoration, not from them, from within. She is no longer trying to become the ideal woman. She's becoming her own woman, and strangely, beautifully, that's the exact moment when the right man appears, not because she summoned him, but because her energy became too rich for anything false to survive around her. And that kind of woman doesn't just attract love, she attracts reverence, because the man who is ready for her knows she is not a prize to be won. She is a home to be honored. He sees it in the way she breathes when she speaks, not rushed, not rehearsed. He feels it in her silences, the kind of silence that doesn't scream for attention, but invites depth. She's not demanding to be protected, but he wants to protect her, not because she's helpless, but because she's holy. There's something sacred about a woman who is no longer available for love that costs her her peace, who no longer confuses intensity with intimacy, who no longer says yes when her body whispers no. And this man, he notices, not just her beauty, but the weight of her presence. He notices how she listens not to respond, but to feel, how she speaks not to impress, but to reveal. She doesn't perform, she doesn't manipulate, she just is. And that isness is irresistible, because she's not filling a role, she's filling the room with truth. It's rare, and men feel it. The right one doesn't want to consume her, he wants to commit to her. He doesn't feel like he has to earn her love through games. He feels invited into a space where he can be both soft and strong, because she's created that space for herself first, and it took time to get here. Time spent in grief, time spent walking away from the almosts, the maybes, the men who said, "I'm not ready," but expected her to wait anyway. She cried. Oh, she cried. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally honest. She let herself be broken. She let herself feel the emptiness. She let herself stand in the doorway of loneliness without running back to the arms that hurt her. That's when the healing began. That's when she realized she wasn't empty. She was clearing the noise, the patterns, the lies, clearing space for a love that doesn't ask her to lose herself. And now, here she is, not perfect, but whole. And the man who is meant to walk with her, he won't be scared by her softness. He won't fumble her feelings. He won't confuse her strength for stubbornness, because he'll recognize her, not just from this life, but from something older, something deeper. He'll feel at home in her honesty. He'll feel alive in her eyes. And he won't want to run. He'll want to root. Because when a man meets a woman who is safe inside herself, he doesn't feel caged, he feels free. And together, they won't perform love, they'll become it. And when they do, when that love finally arrives, it doesn't rush. It doesn't explode into chaos. It doesn't burn like wildfire and then vanish with the wind. It's steady. It's warm. It's sure. She doesn't question it every night, wondering if she said too much, felt too deeply, loved too loudly. She doesn't scroll through messages, decoding silences, or blaming herself for distance. She's not walking on eggshells. She's walking on earth, grounded, calm, alive. Because this love doesn't take her away from herself. It brings her back. It reminds her of who she is. Not just the soft girl who dreamed of fairy tales, but the woman who rebuilt herself when no one showed up. She doesn't lose herself in him. She expands. He doesn't try to fix her. He holds her. Not just her body, her shadows, her dreams, her fears. He meets her in all of it, not because it's convenient, but because it's real, and he is done with pretending too. Because this kind of love, it requires both of them to be naked, not just skin, but soul. That's the kind of love she was always worthy of, but she had to walk through the fire to know it. She had to lose what wasn't real to recognize what is. She had to stop begging to be loved and start becoming the woman who receives it without bleeding for it. And now, she is her own standard. She doesn't settle not because she's hard, but because she's healed. She doesn't explain her worth. She embodies it, and every step she takes now is sacred because it's hers. Every no is protection. Every yes is permission. Every silence is a prayer. Every boundary is a blessing. She's not the woman she once was, the one who gave too soon, trusted too fast, stayed too long. She's the woman who chooses, and she chooses love that honors her, love that meets her, love that mirrors back the wholeness she fought so hard to reclaim. She's no longer looking to be rescued. She's already home, and that's what makes her the woman every man wants to marry and protect. Not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. Because when a man meets a woman who protects her own heart with grace, he doesn't just fall in love, he rises into it.